Okay, you're good.
Thank you. When you get the agenda, then I'll.
Yep, I'm pulling it now.
No worries. While waiting for that, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the February meeting of the Citizens Police Review Board. And our first agenda item is, did everybody receive their minutes from the January meeting?
Yes.
Okay, so call to order. And does anybody have any revisions to that board minute meeting? Meeting minutes? Hearing none, we will accept the minutes as submitted. So we call this to order. We have excused members, Ms. McClellan, Sheldon, Mr. Williams, and we may be expecting Mr. Robinson, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So those are the excused, and we hope to see Mr. Robinson shortly. So today's meeting will be the board business, followed by the case review. And then we will have announcements that the public can comment, and at 3 minutes for a limited time of 3 minutes. And if you want to put your name in the chat, and we will monitor that throughout the meeting. Thank you. Director Pittenger, your report.
Thank you, Dr. Gershio. Good evening, members. I have a couple of quick notes for you, and then we will visit with Mr. Tassone from Trulio. Our intake thus far this year consists of 40 complaints or contacts that involve City of Pittsburgh police officers' conduct. That's about on track, I think, compared to other years at this point in the year. The City of Pittsburgh has a community health and wellness office that has been being developed for the last several years. Recently, it has been identified in some news reports, some criticism about they're still trying to get up and ready, they haven't been up and ready, and so on and so forth. I did have an opportunity to meet with their key law enforcement assisted diversion director, their lead person. And it sounds to me like they really have some great ideas, and they are pursuing with some community folks that are targeted in various areas for further input to the model that they wish to run with in the neighborhoods.
It's Melinda.
We're hoping for some. We're hoping for some.
Mute.
Somebody's talking there. Okay. Anyway, they're getting ready to deploy, and their goal is to have officers assisted with mental health professionals and people who could intervene and hopefully reduce the negative encounters that have happened over the past, and certainly with an effort to connect people to this kind of help and support they need immediately, rather than having an enforcement action taken against them. It really puts the police officers at that point into a caretaking role, which would be a positive, as long as the person gets what they need, and that the staff person who may be assisting them or riding with them, responding to a particular call, that individual's safety is also paramount, and that they will be protected. So they're on the road. Hopefully within the year, we're going to see some very positive results from this model of assisted diversion from the Community Health and Wellness Office. Mr. Jim Rogers, his death is still an open investigation, apparently, in the district attorney's office. However, District Attorney Zappala did indicate that he intends to release all the body-worn camera involved in that incident. We don't know when, but at some point, we should be able to see that body-worn video. We have with us tonight the co-founder and CEO of Trulio. Trulio is an analytics interest that evaluates, assesses the audio from police body-worn camera video and audio to use it as a professional development tool to identify where and when an officer may have conducted him or herself in a way that actually contributed to the use of force or negative interactions. The beauty of this product is that it gives personal feedback to the officer. And that becomes a tool of professional development and also an accountability tool. Chief Truver in Castle Shannon, our neighbor, I guess they piloted it and now they're using it. And he sings the praises of this product, this product. And I'm just going to turn it over to our guest, Mr. Chisone, to give us a short presentation and to entertain any questions or observations that any of you may have. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you, Executive Director and the rest of the board. Thank you for having me this evening. If I can just ask if I could share my screen, please. I'm just waiting for to become capable to share my screen.
Yeah, 1 second, I'm doing it now. Do you have the share at the bottom of your screen?
Yes. I'm
Okay.
just going to try to see. I want to make sure I can share sound as well.
Okay.
Okay. I'll do my best with this. Sure. Please install Zoom audio device. Bummer. Okay. I'm not sure if I can share audio. Well, I had a little message come up, but anyway, we'll move on. As I said, thanks for having me. My name is Anthony Chisone. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Trulio. Trulio is a automated body camera review and analysis platform. We're based in Chicago. We're a data science company. And I'm going to walk through a presentation for about 10 minutes. I'll talk to you about how does it work, why it works, why we exist, what problems do we solve. And then after about 10 minutes, I'll pause for Q&A. And so a little bit about our history. We come from Wall Street. This technology is widely used in Fortune 500 companies and Wall Street and call centers. Today, if you call Bank of America, you're going to hear this call is being monitored for quality assurance purposes. And so this is by no means new. Businesses that are in sales and in customer service, they analyze employee phone calls because they want to generate insight so they can recruit better people, train better people, understand their client pain points. And so we've just applied the technology we've worked on for 10 years to policing. We've been in the police industry for about a year and a half. I'm from a police family, a military and law enforcement family. And so we're super passionate about improving trust in the police because we feel strongly that the vast majority of these men and women are doing a good job. And the best way to improve trust in police is to surface that, to really celebrate and highlight and promote the folks that are doing a good job, and to provide a way for some of the younger officers or inexperienced officers or less professional officers to realize how their language is impacting their outcomes. And so hopefully you can see our website that I'm sharing with you. I'm going to try to share this another slide here. Let's see if it will let me do this. Share. Okay. I think I have to do this one slide at a time. So if you think about the problem that Trulio set out to solve, you folks spend a lot of money on body cameras. And you might be surprised to learn that less than 1% of those videos are ever reviewed by any human. Unless there's a horrific use of force or civilian complaint, no one's watching those videos at a department. Most departments have what they call a random review process, where they'll select one video per month per officer. That video can be 1 minute long. It could be the officer driving. So there's a review process that might occur. They call it a random review. We don't think that's effective. It's certainly not helping to improve police professionalism. So we learned that there's actually hundreds of millions of hours of this body camera data sitting in the cloud, and that's where we access it. So Pittsburgh police will wear Axon cameras. They'll come in, they'll dock their cameras like they normally do. We've got an integration into Axon, into Motorola and LensLock and other camera providers. So we're in the cloud. That's where our GPUs are installed. That's where the AI in the machine is. And it just communicates back and forth with the video storage. There's no human beings involved in this process. Trulio doesn't get access to this data. No court can compel me for this data because it's all going to stay at Pittsburgh Police Department. And so we're going to automatically process 100% of that data. And we're going to provide your sergeants, because this product's really designed for a sergeant, we're going to provide them with a lot of insights around which officers are getting high professional remarks so they can give them attaboys and celebrate and promote them. We'll flag which officers are using insults, threats, or profanity. When we do that, we also give the officer some training materials. We're really big on like, don't use that language because it's not effective. In our data, we show them that if an officer is using threats, insults, and profanity, they actually don't get any higher compliance rates than an officer that doesn't do that language. So there's really no benefit to doing it at all. In fact, it just looks horrific to judges, juries, and the public. The officer looks angry, out of control, and emotional. And so we want to keep officers in control, thinking logically, and always being professional. And so as we surface that, good behavior is rewarded. These are human beings. They have bad days. They make mistakes. It's really nice that Trulio can put things in context. So if you do have an officer that had a bad call for whatever reason, if I'm that officer's supervisor, I want to check in on he or she and say, hey, man, are you good? Do you need a break? You usually don't speak to people like that. Are you burned out? Have you been not sleeping? What's going on? So think of it also as an officer wellness tool that you can intervene and prevent risky behavior before it becomes culture, right? What happened in Memphis, we're big advocates of those 5 officers, those are young officers that they made hundreds of decisions that would have happened before they decided to beat a man to death on camera. That didn't happen just that day. That was a lack of supervision and a culture that deteriorated over time. And so Trulio is a tool and a platform to automate supervision, to maintain super high levels of professionalism. And we do that through body camera analysis. Just going to share one other slide here about how this works, and I'll go into the software. So natural language processing, it's like a fancy way of saying transcription and analysis. Again, this same technology is used throughout the world by Fortune 500 companies. We transcribe, we identify who is the officer speaking. This is really important that we identify who the officer is. This is not just some mass surveillance, sucking up civilian data, transcribing them. This is focused on officers' audio. We're smart enough to detect that's the officer speaking based on something we do called the voice ID print. So once we separate out officers, we can automatically detect what events happening right now with this officer. Are they in a use of force? Are they pursuing somebody? Is an arrest occurring? And what we really look for is non-compliance, because this is the area that we're most helpful, is identifying officers who have non-compliance, and we try to figure out how to help them get better compliance in the future. A lot of officers that use Trulio, the patrol officer will log in to go into their non-compliance queue to review all those instances this month of non-compliance, to just review and to listen to themselves and to think about and to take a little survey and a test. Did I give enough explanation? We find that that is the key to getting good compliance rates. It's to give less commands and more explanation the public, people, millennials, they ask a lot of questions. And so we're really big on officers giving more explanation because we see it in the data. Officers who give more explanation have about 5 times less use of force and escalations occur. Now, when we label officer language, think of this as, an event is neutral. Whatever's happening is neutral. It's just part of policing. But the officer can control their language. And so we want to see a lot of formality and giving explanation and being polite and giving gratitude. And the officer, like a video game, collects some points when they use that type of language. Now, if they use profanity, insults, and threats, we don't like that. We flag that as risk, but we flag that to the sergeant, and the sergeant will have to click, yes, that's against policy, because not every department has a zero tolerance profanity. Sometimes the officer is using profanity while they're driving with another officer, or sometimes, if for whatever reason, it's not against policy. So when we flag these risk elements, it goes to the sergeant, and the sergeant will click yes or no, that's against policy. And finally, let me go into the product now. If I can, I'm just going to try to figure out how to do this. Here we go. So when you log into Trulio, it's a lot like an email inbox. That's how the sergeants explain it or feel like it works, where they've got a list of my calls. They can go into their officers and look at some stats. But if we go into my calls, this is where they spend a lot of time. They can be alerted or notified of something. They can search for a label like a use of force. And again, this all comes in as the shift's ending. Everyone's docking their cameras, and the sergeant is making sure they're not surprised by anything. So they might see like a use of force here with some non-compliance. So they'll click into that. Just like Netflix, you'll click right to the chapter. Instead of watching a long 1-hour video, just show me where there's some non-compliance.
No, I'm gonna taser you. I'm gonna taser you right.
So we saw non-compliance, and then if we click on use of force, we're taken right to the use of force. We're taken right to where the use of force occurred. And so for a sergeant to click into my calls, you can go and watch that language and that tactics and make sure that your officers are doing a good job. Now for that officer, Stephen Reed, I'm going to pause this video so we don't watch it again. But if I click on Stephen Reed, I can get what we call the baseball card stats for cops. And I can look at this officer over time and get a sense of how much professional language does he use? How much non-compliance does he encounter? Does he use risky behavior? If I'm doing a performance review with him, I can get a sense of what type of events are taking place in his data. A lot of officers want to know, like, how do I get higher scores in Trulio? And so that's all open source. And part of our onboarding, we tell them exactly what they need to be saying. And the idea is that the more professional you are, the better your non-compliance rates are going to be. That's what we want to see. Non-compliance come down and your professional behavior go up. And let me just pause for 1 second. I've got one last thing I want to show, which is, I think the executive director had mentioned it when we first got on, but we've got about 24 departments using Trulio throughout the country. A few now are in Pennsylvania, Castle Shannon and Elizabethtown. But here's a study that we did of a department in California, and they used Trulio for 12 months. And we measured 12 months before they used Trulio. So we processed all this historical data. And then we processed after they used Trulio for 12 months, what happened in the department. And their department saw a 36% decrease in use of force, a 30% decrease in unprofessional language, an increase in explanation. And here's like the miracle, which is interesting, is the civilians don't know there's such thing as body camera analytics, but they saw a 12% decrease in non-compliance. And that is a result of the officers having different language, giving more explanation. Another thing that's interesting is about 98.7% of all interactions we rated as professional. There was no risk involved. We were happy with the officer's language. And so we can really celebrate this department, and they can go and tell their public and their community, hey, the vast majority of us are doing a good job. Let me pause there and see if anyone has any questions.
Mr.
Mr.
Tessoni,
Tessoni.
this is Emma Lucas Darby, and I'm a member of the board. I'm fascinated, I guess is the best term I could use for this platform. And I do have a couple of questions. What is the length of time that the platform retains the data? For example, if there's a complaint 9 months ago, the data is still available?
So it's interesting. The machine doesn't retain any data. What it does is it communicates with your Axon evidence environment, and it processes all those videos, and then it puts the transcripts and all the metadata in a database owned by your police department. And so they are the owners of record of this data. We don't retain any of it. We're just giving them an engine that processes this data and puts it in a database for them. What we see is that departments will tie that to their retention policy. So as they delete videos in evidence.com after a certain period of time, that information will be deleted from Trulio's database as well.
Okay. It requires some time to go into each officer's data to determine what Trulio has picked up. Am I understanding that correctly?
Well, no, well, we can process 20, 30,000 hours of video in a single night. We have before. So bigger departments, they have a lot of data. Each officer creates about 250 hours a year. And so that's based on like 6 to 12 interactions per shift, working 20, 22 days a month. So when we get this data, we're going to process it in almost real time. So before the sergeant goes home, his shift comes in, they dock cameras. We're processing that data within minutes. Now, I'm not sure if that answers your question. Was that your question?
That sort of answers it. So it's being processed on the spot, so to speak.
As soon as they dock their cameras, we process it before they leave the building.
Okay. So when the sergeant wants to look at it, what triggers whether the behavior was acceptable or not?
Yep. So they will set up alerts and notifications, and then the sergeant, just like in your email inbox, like you can, if you want things to show up in one folder, like all the uses of force, pursuits, arrests, non-compliance, frisking, like, the thing about policing is 95% of their interactions are not interesting. They're taking statements from witnesses and victims. That's why we focus on these other events that are the most interesting. They're the highest risk events. And so those get surfaced in Trulio's platform. And now they can also create custom alerts and notifications, which Chief Truber in Pennsylvania does, for example. He's got all types of custom alerts set up. He wants to know if somebody asks to speak to your supervisor. I want to file a complaint. So you can create your own custom labels and your own custom alerts and have that be notified directly to command staff or to a sergeant or anybody that's on that email thread.
Okay. All right. That explains it. Thank you.
So I guess the follow up with Dr. Darby is, so the sergeant at the end of his shift, or does the next sergeant read that? Because I'm guessing that when the shift is over and they're putting their cameras, when they're docking their cameras, that sergeant's docking his to the door too, right?
Yep, totally. This is what we see happening. The sergeant basically is spread super thin, right? That's why we exist, because your department, like everyone's, probably is like 70% with 3 years or less on. So super young departments. The middle of the departments are gone or super spread thin. There's not a big supervision sergeant layer anymore. A lot of the guys at departments are older. And so that's where we help. We're like a virtual sergeant or a sergeant's assistance tool. The sergeant uses us because the squad comes in, we process their cameras. The sergeant will maybe come in off the street, take a look. What they're looking for is all the use of force, frisk, pursuits, non-compliant, all that stuff is there so they can check it out and not be surprised by anything before they leave. And so they should have the paperwork. If there's a use of force, they want to make sure the paperwork's filed. Then they'll go home and they'll typically do the risk reviews on a Friday, where they'll go into each officer and they'll say, okay, how many calls did this officer go on where he used threats, insults, profanity. They'll go in, they'll verify that it's accurate. They'll verify that it's against policy. And then they'll bring that up in their next performance review or discussion with the officer, or they send that right to command staff. The reason Trulio is helpful is because we provide suggestions to the patrol officer, and the patrol officer knows that we flag something. A lot of times that helps have the conversation between the sergeant, who remembers, also a young officer. They might have been a patrol officer 6 months ago. And a lot of times it's hard for them to have the conversation with the patrol officers. So by us flagging it, sending them information, giving them training material, we're giving them the data that says, there's a ton of data out there from the FBI and others that using insults, threats, and profanity, all it does is lower trust and legitimacy. It makes everyone less safe. It's not good on video. It doesn't look great to judges or juries, so don't do it. There's enough content out there that I think that there's not a lot of police that we interact with that disagree with that statement. They don't want to hear or see that language in any capacity. It doesn't matter what the event is. Do not use unprofessional language. And so that's kind of the workflow. The sergeant will do a Friday performance review, go look at everybody's risk. And then I would say maybe once a month, maybe once a quarter sometimes, the command staff will look at the baseball card stats of everyone. Usually it's when the command staff has a meeting with elected officials. We'll see them in the product a lot. They're about to meet with the mayor and they want to know what percentage of professionalism is in the department right now. Do they have any issues or problems? Okay, these 3 or 4 officers are the bulk of the problem. We're aware of it. We're working with these guys. We're trying to train them. We're trying to fix or correct that behavior. So we see the mayor get involved in a conversation maybe once a quarter.
There's some questions in the audience.
Sure.
Is there a review mechanism for a situation where a sergeant may be overriding review of language and such, possibly too frequently?
Yes. So there's a whole bunch of metadata that gets generated and sent to command staff where we compare the false positive rates of all the sergeants. So in other words, it's very difficult for number one, a patrol officer to game this, because even the patrol officer could use, professional language, but still his demeanor and his attitude is ineffective. We would detect that through the civilian response. So if we see a lot of civilian noncompliance, then, that officer's not gonna be able to game this system, right? The whole point of the system is like use good language to get better compliance rates. So if you've got an officer, let's say you've got 10 officers in the same neighborhood, same shift, but one officer's got super high non-compliance rates, like that's a problem. You got to go check in and figure out why that officer's not effective. So on the sergeant side, the way that we prevent a sergeant for covering for, certain patrol officers, or even picking on patrol officers, remember it goes both ways. We remove bias. Everyone gets judged by the same algorithms, the same models, the same weights. And if we flag officers to the sergeant, all of that yes, no is collected. And that is represented and given to the command staff. And so it's very easy for them to visualize, okay, this officer had 100 false positives, this month. That's crazy. That's a lot. And you're saying you verify all of them and 0% are accurate. And you can look at those verification rates across sergeants and across officers. And for the most part, we see them be relatively stable across all sergeants at all departments. And it's something that our success team works on it with the command staff. And we do our best to sort of mitigate, bad behavior at that point.
Is the FOP receptive in Pittsburgh?
In Pittsburgh, yes, interestingly. And again, like it's, the unions are all different. They've got different personalities and different attitudes throughout the country. So I can't give an answer about all of FOP, but FOP in Pittsburgh in particular has been one of the more supportive unions of this product. And the reason why is because they want to put bad events in context. This is what they focused on. They believe strongly that they want a tool where they can say, look, this officer let's say it was a bad use of force and this officer made a bad decision today. They want to be able to show the history of this officer, that this officer is not a monster. But Trulio, if you are an officer that is a monster, Trulio is going to find you. And there's no way to hide the horrific behavior of like a Derek Chauvin, for example, that had 19 civilian complaints and was a super ineffective officer for a long time. So, I think the union recognizes that we can surface that 98 or 99% of these interactions are going to be professional or positive, but even 1 or 2% that would embarrass the department, if you think about that, it ends up being quite a lot of interactions because each officer is having 6 to 12 per day. You're talking about a lot of interactions every single day, maybe 1 or 2 in the department that would embarrass the department. And so they really want to be aware of that and to mitigate that risk.
Lastly, will CPRB have the ability to subpoena the metrics if an officer is in review?
I can only tell you what I've seen happen in the rest of the country thus far. The departments wrap this into a training program, and so I've not seen it where anyone is able to subpoena training data. And I'm not seeing any attempts either. So it's very early for me to give an opinion there. I can only tell you that I've seen departments emphasize the training nature of this platform and program, and they do that to make sure that it's not exposed to public records requests, for example.
And then there's another hand up. I'm gonna allow Miss Malaysia Smith to speak. Go ahead, Miss Smith.
Hello, everyone. My name is Malaysia Smith, Community Engagement Coordinator with the Office of Community Health and Safety. My question is, besides language, in my role, we're going to be dealing with clients being diverted into a program. And I was wondering, could this be used in case we are trying to look for someone? So say we haven't come in contact with someone and we want to go by this data and search by name for the person. Could this be helpful for that?
Yeah, so all of the data is searchable. So remember, the videos are getting transcribed, and it's not simple syntax parsing or simple keyword searching. It's deep learning. It's like Google search. So not only will we reference the actual search term, but all like terms. So you get a powerful search capability as an added benefit of Trulio.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Dr. Gershio?
Yes. Go ahead, Beth.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Tassoni.
Mr. Robinson.
Retention.
I'm sorry, Beth. Mr. Robinson has his hand up.
Go ahead, Mr. Robinson.
I'm sorry. Yes. Thank you, Mr. Tassone. Have any police departments or any jurisdictions utilized this and for like the data against offenders or actors?
How so? Can you elaborate a little bit further on that?
I guess as I'm thinking it, they'd already have the video, so the video would kind of already be that. So yeah, I guess maybe to reframe, could someone who was arrested, could they solicit that data about a contact with an officer? So if the actor is saying this was said to me, blah, 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 I guess they can already do that with the video too. This is nothing more than just transcribing what's already on the video. So
yes, sir. That's exactly right. It's just
okay.
Right now police think of these body camera videos as a liability. That's how they think in their mindset. And we argue this data is an asset. It's an asset for training good officers and celebrating guys that are doing it good every day. And the 1% that can't figure it out, it's for you to go mitigate that risk, go put them back in training or figure out what's going on with them to get them better compliance rates.
So let me ask, the control of the body worn camera video that's under a policy. The Trulio data, is that kept separately even when the video may have been purged? Would the analysis of that video be retained off, like somewhere else?
Yes, Beth. So what happens is Axon sends us a audio stream that we transcribe and analyze. And so what happens is a transcript gets created and some metadata right around, all of our insights, like how we score officers. That is stored on a database in Amazon GovCloud or Microsoft Azure, essentially Gov Clouds, the retention to the video and to the transcript. So when they delete one, the other one's gone. But your department can do whatever they want. For us, we don't ever get access to that database. We simply install the AI, which are called GPU containers. We install this in the cloud, and then we get off their cloud and we give it to them. And we have no idea what's happening, in these videos. They'll call us to support them as best we can, but we rarely get access to see something that is, CJIS compliant, and really it's data that belongs to the city and the department, and we don't have any business or access looking at it.
Got it. Appreciate that. And are you aware of the departments that are using it? Are they building that into an early warning system in-house?
Yes. Yeah. It's so exciting because, analytics really, this is the future of policing. There's no doubt. The federal government just came out and created grant money for body camera analytics for the first time ever in 2023. So we're already seeing the feds move towards how do we make sense of this data? How can we use this data to improve community trust? But also, I think it can be used as an early intervention system. It can be fed downstream to those IA pros, or whatever your IA tool is. It's an officer wellness tool. We just announced Chief Gang in California. If you search Trulio Chief Gang, you'll read about Pinole County, California, where he's using Trulio to help with officer wellness, depression, mental issues, where he's looking for relationships between spikes and baseline, where an officer performs at a certain rate over time and months, and then suddenly their behaviors changed. And it's an opportunity for them to check in and say, hey, are you going through something? Are you going through a divorce? Did something happen last week? What is going on? Because this behavior is abnormal. And so, having in analytics it's good leadership. It's good policing. It's good to know what's going on with your people. We don't see it being used in the country as a sort of a punitive tool to catch cops saying swear words. That's not what this is about. This is a tool that can celebrate officers that are doing a good job, because I think departments need help to tell their story, because the vast majority of them are doing a good job. But the small percentage that are not, what's happening is they can't get good compliance. They don't get good compliance because their professionalism is low and their language is poor. And so we're all about trying to identify who are the cops that are having problems getting compliance, and letting sergeants and human beings focus on trying to fix that issue.
I love this product and love the way it works. I love the feedback it gives to the individual officers, because that's one thing in my experience that I've observed. You have such a mix of officers wanting and actually reaching a professional level, and others who just, and there's no high level of expectation. So they aren't even reaching for it. So you have that kind of diversity within the department here anyway. And I just think that giving that feedback directly to the officer for their own personal professional development is huge. And bringing your background to this area of community life, to law enforcement, it's like, yes, finally, the things that work in corporate America actually do have a place where we're trying to develop a profession. And this is a tool that can help develop and put that element into the training and the expectation that I believe is we're operating at a deficit up until this point.
Yeah.
So I really, really applaud you and your colleagues for bringing this out and paying attention to this part of community life that usually only gets negative attention.
Yeah.
And I thank you for coming here today.
Yeah, thank you. And we're not, I don't want to take credit for being, we're basically just doing what everyone else is doing in Fortune 500 already. You know, any call center, anybody working in sales or support, their calls are being analyzed by their employer to help them become better at their job. We're just simply taking the same technologies and applying to policing.
Long and very, very welcome that you're doing that.
Yeah, thank you.
Did you have any opportunity to discuss with the Pittsburgh Bureau of Police Administration and or electeds in this city to advise them of this product? And did you have any kind of a response from them?
Yeah, we've had a few interactions with Commander Ragland from Pittsburgh Police. He's been a good friend and ally, and he's doing his best to sort of champion this product and to get it into Pittsburgh. My understanding is there's been a lot of change at Pittsburgh Police. I think there's been a new chief and there's some leadership changes. I can't recall us having any formal presentations with any elected officials, any mayors. And typically that's important because a lot of the chiefs that I meet, they really want their mayor to push this over the line. And I want to tell you guys why. If you remember body cameras 7 years ago, when they came out, police didn't want them or like them. It was mayors that forced the issue. And then the police had to get cameras. With analytics, it's tough for a chief to be in that position to say, well, I'm going to go do this when no one's forcing them to do it. They really need the elected officials to come and support them and say, look, I'm going to support you. You're going to get analytics. You may find some dirt. You may find some problems. I'm here to support you during that process because I know we're going to get through it. And ultimately, we're going to improve the professionalism of the department. So I feel that it's both the chiefs and the mayors need to be partners in getting a product like Trulio.
And how about the local law departments, and not just the city of Pittsburgh, but generally speaking, city municipal solicitors? How did they respond to the product?
Beth, say that again. I'm not sure who you're referring to.
The lawyers on behalf of the municipal corporations, like the city solicitors.
Well,
do they have
city
objections to it?
No, city managers and the like. I mean, they like this tool because we've seen them in reduced insurance premiums out in California, where this tool is primarily used. We've seen risk pools really celebrate this product that end up paying out police settlements. We've got a lot of like private businesses that want to fund their department to get this because they want, there's a lot of businesses that want to support good quality policing. As opposed to defunding police, there are businesses that want to give money to policing, but they only want to do it if it's to promote and to ensure good quality policing. No, we don't run into hurdles with those folks, Beth. They're just sort of part of the procurement process.
Good to know. It would make sense that it would be in their interest to promote something that would reduce the risk to their
Mm-hmm.
cities.
Mm-hmm.
Terrific.
Mm-hmm.
When was it that
Madam Chair, I think that's it from me. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Was it recent that you talked with the Pittsburgh Bureau? Your discussion?
Let's see. I had dinner with Commander Ragland just a few weeks ago.
Okay.
And because I was in town visiting with Chief Truver, who's one of our customers in Castle Shannon. And I don't think I've ever been in the Pittsburgh Police Department. I think we may have done a couple of Zooms. Last summer, I invited 3 patrol officers to play golf at an FBI conference, and but we haven't had a lot of interaction with Pittsburgh lately. Our understanding is that there's been some leadership changes, and we were sort of waiting for, I think, for them to get a chief, if I'm recalling that correctly. I think,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Again, one last, anybody have any questions? Additional questions, I should say. Thank you so very much. We appreciate your time. And
Thank you.
I think a lot of us like the product. So let's hope the city moves forward.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mhm. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you. Bye.
Board,
A lot of
any
potential there.
board, any remarks before we move on with the agenda?
I did. I was impressed as well by the presentation and seemingly the capabilities of the software of the product.
Yeah, so it's pretty impressive analytics. I mean, they've done a really good job of kind of narrowing in on the training aspect. Anybody else? Alrighty, so I believe we still have quorum so that we can do the reviews. Is that correct? I'm looking. Yes, we still have quorum. All right, so we'll move on to our case review. And so tonight we have 3 cases for full investigation. Number 028-23, 010-23, and 004-23. Do I have a motion?
I move that we accept those 3 for full investigation.
Thank you, Dr. Darby. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
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 You. And for 30-day extension of full investigation, we have case number 187-22, case 181-22, case 175-22, 101-22, and the last one 099-22. Do I have a motion?
It's 102-22.
I'm sorry. I don't know what I said. Yeah, 102-22 and 099-22. Sorry for that.
No worries.
Motion.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you. Second,
I second.
discussion?
I have a couple of questions.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I do too.
Let's see. On 099-22,
Mm-hmm.
and this is for the investigators. I'm just unclear. Under the section preliminary investigation, paragraph 4, when it says that the complainant and complainant number 2 were directed to the customer service, did they say who directed them there? Because I don't see any mention of any other people before that, other than witness, let's see, what is it? Witness 1 and witness 4. I'm just not clear on who's involved at that point.
I believe, Ms. Hunt, you have that case? And you may be muted.
There we go. I'm just trying to unmute. They were directed by the loss prevention. I can pull it up to see what number of witness as a witness I have him as. I believe he's witness number 1, but I'm not sure. But that's who directed them to customer service originally, was the loss prevention gentleman.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question.
Kiki, go ahead.
Case 17522, forgive my ignorance. Is this the same case that was presented a few months ago with the gentleman who saw the police officer in the bike lane? Yes. Well,
wasn't there this is extended investigation?
We're extending it due to we're ready to move forward with a possible preliminary hearing, public hearing.
Okay.
So as the status, this is just the next step, and we're moving it along to possibly progress it to the public hearing very soon.
Okay,
Thank
so
you.
for full investigation. Okay, thank you. Any other questions for
Add to
clarity?
that. Let me add to that, please, Madam Chair. Ms.
Certainly.
Brown, that case is going to come back to you next month with a recommendation for a public hearing, but the charge sheets had to be prepared and verified. And it was not prepared for this evening's meeting.
Okay. Thank you.
Good catch.
Thank you. Alrighty, so we're moving on. Oh, go ahead. Sorry,
Mr.
sir.
Green,
Sorry, just a couple of details on that same case. At the opening, it says incident date and time. For the time, it says 28:15. Would I be correct in guessing that it's actually 18:15?
I would have to go and review. I'm sure it's not 28.
Okay,
That would not be correct.
I was very confused.
It was a long day. It was a very long day.
That was
I could use a couple extra hours today.
Yeah.
But yes,
Also-
you can, yes, it is 18.
Okay, and also, I'm actually embarrassed to ask this because I feel like I should be able to recite the answer. But in the complaint, the complainant expresses the concern that the subject officer turned off his body-worn camera. But in the rationale for the investigation, it says that the subject officer did not turn his body-worn camera on. I'm unclear about what policy says should happen because there is a distinction between not turning the camera on in the first place and turning it off if it already is on. Can anyone speak to that?
Well, the policy speaks to that because he was interacting with the public, he should have had it on.
Okay, so he should have turned it on.
He should have turned it on
Okay,
to begin with.
yeah.
Okay, so he didn't turn it off. He just didn't ever turn it on. Is that?
He didn't, yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Okay,
So that's
Thank
what we found when we subpoenaed for the body worn camera footage. We found that there was none because he had not turned it on.
yeah.
And he's in that violation because he should have had it on to begin with.
I thought he was doing something socially. Like, I didn't know he was on duty.
Well, I think that was the case. Yeah, that's what I thought, that he was.
Yeah,
off
so
duty.
he wasn't in uniform, right?
No, he was in uniform and he was performing a secondary detail.
Okay.
And the problem
that's
was
right.
he parked his personal vehicle in the bike lane. That's
That's what it was.
but he was in
Okay.
uniform, but he parked
Okay.
his personal vehicle in the bike lane.
Yeah, And he
Okay,
was on
that makes sense.
personal, and then he was on personal duty or whatever they call secondary
Duty.
Yeah,
Yes, ma'am.
all right.
Thank you, Ms. Hunt.
Thank you.
Alrighty. Any other questions with those cases? Okay, now we're up to,
Oh, you need a vote.
oh,
Vote.
sorry, thank you. Thanks for keeping me on. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Opposed? Ayes have it. Then we have one that is unfounded. If we could move up. I think we skipped a couple here.
It's none for unfounded, it's unsustainable.
Oh, sorry.
Unfounded is 0.
Okay, I see that now. Sorry. Unsustainable, we have one case, 160-21 ED. May I have a motion?
I so move.
Thank you, sir. Second?
I second.
Thank you. Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye.
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 Thank you. Opposed? Ayes have it. And our case that is for suspension, we have one case. It's case 197-22. May I have a motion?
I move.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Thank you. Discussion? All in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Ayes have it. And then we have for possible, I'm sorry, I'm moving here, possible closing for continued suspension. I'm very sorry. Continued suspension is 171-22, 170-22, 143-22, 123-22, 100-22, 063-22, 035-22, 020-22, 001-22, 171-21, 138.
That's 177.
Gosh, thank you.
177.
Thanks for your eyes, guys. This is really small. 138-21, 252-20, 112-20, 190-19, and 87-18 ED. Do I have a motion? Someone on mute? I didn't hear that. Motion?
Madam Chair, I don't think you need to take any
Yes?
action on those.
Yeah.
Those are
Oh,
provided.
that's right.
for
That's,
the purpose-
I am very, that's right. These are just, yeah, those are
Updates,
the
yeah.
informational. Sorry, guys.
Those are the ones that are in suspension and they're sitting on the side, but we don't want to lose them either. And so we send them back to you every month as a matter of information.
And possible public hearing at some point, correct?
Maybe.
Already, just so that everybody knows that our next regular meeting is at 6 p.m. on March 28th. And again, it will be via Zoom. And updates may be, delayed for the meeting. Board meetings will remain online until COVID becomes more controlled. All right, are there any other announcements? All right, do we have any public comment? Do we see anything, Stephanie, in the remarks? In the chat?
No comments.
Okay. Hearing none. We'll make a motion for this meeting to adjourn.
I so move.
Second,
Second.
thank you. Any discussion about that adjournment? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Aye. A cup of tea to you. Aye.